You know what they say, ignorance is bliss. And I was practically euphoric. I had a wife I adored, a job that paid the bills without asking for my soul, and a golden retriever that thought I hung the moon. My name is Mark Denton. I was a suburban cliché, and I wore it like a badge of honor. Mowed my lawn on Saturdays, grilled steaks on Sundays, and pretended to like wine tastings to make my wife happy. Her name was Clarissa. Blonde, beautiful, and brilliant, with an executive title that required a lanyard and a LinkedIn profile 3 scrolls long. She worked in PR, public relations, not personal rendezvous, as I'd later discover. But for now, I thought I'd married up. Way up. We lived in a 2-story colonial with shutters that matched the mailbox. Our neighbors described us as perfect. That's the word they used. Perfect. And like most things labeled perfect, it came with fine print. Clarissa had this laugh, this fake, high-pitched giggle that she used when we were around company. I used to think it was her polite laugh. Turns out, it was her, I'm hiding something laugh. But hindsight is 20/20ths, and at the time, I just chalked it up to nerves. Looking back, the signs were there. The mysterious late meetings. The phone she never let out of her sight. The way she suddenly cared about gym leggings and Pilates at 6 a.m. Clarissa hated mornings. The woman needed coffee just to put on socks. But now, she was up with the birds, stretching in spandex like she was auditioning for a yoga commercial. Still, I said nothing. Because love is blind, but denial is deaf, dumb, and wearing a wedding ring. Then came the night that should have set off alarm bells. We were at dinner with friends, and her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it and went pale. I asked her if everything was okay. She smiled that fake, photoshoot smile and said, "Just work stuff." Now, I've been married long enough to know that when a woman says, "just work stuff," there are only 2 possibilities. It's actually work, or it's someone making her wish she wasn't married. Naturally, I chose the first option, because I was a happy idiot. A devoted, trusting, grilled salmon on Tuesdays kind of husband. And I was about to have my world turned inside out. It all started unraveling on a Tuesday. Tuesdays, man. Nothing good ever happens on a Tuesday. Clarissa had left her laptop open in the kitchen. That alone was rare, like seeing Bigfoot doing your taxes. Normally, her devices were Fort Knox, passwords, facial recognition, maybe even a retina scan if she could swing it. But that day, she slipped. Now, I didn't go looking. That's important. I wasn't snooping. I was reaching for the charger to plug in my phone when the screen lit up like a guilty conscience. There it was. An email. Subject line, "Last night was incredible." Now, my first instinct? Spam. You know, the kind that promises wild nights and questionable Russian brides. But the sender? Not some sketchy email from a domain in Belarus. No, this was from Anthony S. And the signature at the bottom? Sent from my work iPhone. Willard and Smith PR division. Her job. Her coworker. Her just a friend. The funny thing is, I didn't open the message. Not at first. I just stood there, staring at that screen like it had personally insulted my mother. I walked out of the kitchen, then walked back in, then out again. Like maybe if I did it enough times, I'd quantum leap into a timeline where that email didn't exist. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Eventually, I clicked it. Because of course I did. Curiosity killed the cat. But in this case, it just made the husband a whole lot smarter. The email wasn't even long. "Last night was incredible. I still taste you on my lips. I can't stop thinking about you. When are we doing that again? You looked amazing in that little black dress. Especially after you took it off." And then, in a bold twist of fate, Clarissa had replied, "We need to be more careful. He's starting to ask questions. But I miss you too. Badly. I'll make something up next Thursday." That he? That was me. I was the footnote in my own marriage. I didn't get angry. Not right away. That came later. What I felt in that moment was clarity. Like someone wiped the fog off the mirror and I finally saw what was standing behind me this whole time. I closed the laptop. Calm. Focused. Unshaken on the outside, while my insides were doing backflips with a lit Molotov cocktail. Now here's where it gets interesting. I didn't confront her. Nope. I smiled when she got home. Kissed her on the cheek. Asked her how her day was. And she lied, straight to my face, without so much as a stutter. "Oh, same old meetings and mayhem," she said, unzipping her jacket. "I'm starving. What's for dinner?" I said lasagna. But what I really meant was retribution. They say the truth will set you free. Sure, right after it drags you through the mud, runs you over with a lawnmower, and backs up to make sure it got both ankles. The night I found that email, I didn't sleep. Not a wink. I lay there next to Clarissa, who was snoring lightly, probably dreaming about her late meetings. And me? I was staring at the ceiling fan like it owed me money. Now, I could have just confronted her. Could have flipped on the lamp, read the email out loud, and watched her face do that Olympic-level mental gymnastics women do when caught. But no, that's not how I play. I wanted facts. I wanted irrefutable, soul-shattering, lawyer-approved proof. So I took a few vacation days. Told Clarissa I needed a break from work. Burnout, you know? She nodded and said something about self-care. Ironic, coming from someone whose version of self-care involved Anthony's hands in hotel rooms. And with that, I got to work. Step 1. Access. Clarissa, in her infinite arrogance, had left her work laptop with a sticky note password at some point. Probably forgot I'm not the idiot she thinks I am. I got in. I didn't dig around like a madman. I let the machine tell me where to go. You know what I found? An email thread buried deep in a personal folder with about 20 messages back and forth. Photos. Flirty crap. It was all there. Everything I needed. And the best part? She was using her work email. Because nothing says brain trust like cheating on your husband through the corporate server. Step 2. Strategy. I composed a short, devastating message from her account. For sentences, surgical and cold. I don't need you anymore. I told my husband everything. Goodbye. No signature. Just that. Let the silence do the talking. Then, with a flick of the wrist, I BCC'd every employee in her company. All of them. From the interns to the board. Marketing, finance, legal. Heck, even the janitor probably got it. I hit send. And just like that, Pandora's inbox flew open. Now, you'd think I'd feel satisfied. Vindicated. Triumphant. But no. I felt something better. Calm. I took the dog for a walk. I got coffee. I picked up a cinnamon roll I didn't need. Life was strangely still. And at 11:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Clarissa. 3 words. We need to talk. Ah yes, the clarion call of the exposed. I didn't reply. Not yet. I waited. An hour later, another message. Why would you do this? Please talk to me. Still no reply. By 3 p.m., I'd gotten 6 missed calls, 1 voicemail, sniffling, not bad, and a very satisfying screenshot from a buddy who worked in IT at her company. The office group chat was on fire. Memes were already being made. Her lover? Anthony S. Fired. Immediately. Clarissa? Suspended pending an internal review for misuse of company resources. Ironic, considering she'd been misusing her whole marriage. But this wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was foreplay. Clarissa came home early that day. She burst through the front door like a Category 5 hurricane in heels, face flushed, breathing like she'd run the last 4 blocks. Probably because she had. Her usually perfect ponytail looked like it had been on a roller coaster and lost the will to live. She dropped her handbag on the floor, didn't even bother with her shoes. Mark, that voice. Part desperate, part authoritative, part I still think I'm in control. She had no idea I'd burned that dynamic to the ground hours ago. I was in the living room, sipping coffee like I didn't just detonate her life with a single keystroke. I didn't look up. Afternoon. Long day at the office. Her jaw opened, words queued up and jammed in the doorway. What did you do? I believe the correct question is, what did you do? I said, setting my mug down. Calm. Measured. The kind of calm that only comes after you've watched the House of Cards collapse in 1080p. She looked at me like she was hoping I'd still be the clueless, gentle husband she used to steamroll. Poor thing. That guy was dead. I gave him a nice burial, right after I printed her emails. You ruined my career, Mark, she shrieked. I raised an eyebrow. Correction. I forwarded your words. Your very personal and very non-HR compliant words from your work email. If I ruined anything, it was only by shining a flashlight on the rats. Her expression cracked, just a little. She flinched like I'd slapped her with a deposition. How long have you known? She asked, voice small now. Like maybe if she softened it, I'd go back to being soft too. I leaned back in the chair and folded my arms. Long enough to memorize your little black dress schedule. She closed her eyes. And for a second, I could see her doing the math, recalculating the timeline, trying to figure out how long I'd been playing her while she thought she was playing me. It was probably the first time she realized she was the amateur in the room. You shouldn't have gone public, she whispered. You shouldn't have gone horizontal with a coworker, I said. But hey, hindsight. She dropped into the armchair across from me like her legs finally got the memo that this wasn't a negotiation. She looked around the room, as if the couch and throw pillows were suddenly foreign objects. Maybe they were. She never saw them as ours, just hers, curated for her image. What happens now? She asked, not quite looking me in the eye. Now. I tapped my chin like I hadn't been planning this moment for weeks. Now, we untangle the mess. She leaned forward. Mark, we don't need to make this uglier than it is. I made a mistake. Stop. I said it sharply, and she actually froze. You didn't make a mistake. You made appointments. You booked hotel rooms. You coordinated calendars like it was a marketing campaign. Don't insult both of us by calling that a mistake. Her mouth opened and closed. Silence. For once, she didn't have a retort. I pulled out a folder. One of those cheap office supply ones. Inside? Copies of the emails. Printouts of their calendar invites. Even a billing statement from a hotel she swore she'd never visited. Funny how Apple Pay disagreed. I laid it gently on the coffee table. This is your copy. For reference. She reached for it like it was radioactive. Don't worry, I said. The real fun's in the original file. I have backups. Cloud, drive, external, email. I could survive a nuclear strike and still send these to your mom. She looked like she might cry. I didn't care. I never meant to hurt you, she said, the line every cheater says when they realize the curtain's been pulled and their life's on stage. Then why did you keep doing it? I asked. She didn't answer. I stood and walked to the kitchen, poured myself another cup of coffee. She followed me in, like she couldn't help herself. You embarrassed me in front of my entire company. I turned. You embarrassed yourself. I just gave the audience a front row seat. She leaned against the fridge, eyes red now, the tears fighting for airtime. What do you want, Mark? And there it was. The question she should have asked months ago. What do I want? I repeated, sipping slowly. I want my dignity back. I want my peace. I want you gone. The last word hit her like a cold slap. She straightened. You're kicking me out? No, I said. You're leaving. There's a difference. Where am I supposed to go? Ask Anthony, I said. Oh wait, he's unemployed and blocked you on everything. Probably too busy explaining the office-wide email to his wife. She looked stunned. How do you? I BCC'd her, too. Clarissa turned pale. Really pale. I thought she might faint. You think I'd stop at just your office? I said, setting my mug down. No, Clarissa. This isn't petty. This is surgical. You carved up our marriage with your lies. I'm just returning the favor. Neatly. I walked back to the living room and opened the drawer by the front door. Pulled out an envelope. Set it on the table. Inside, a separation agreement. Already signed by me. Already reviewed by my lawyer. Already fair, more than fair, really. I suggest you read this carefully. Then pack a bag. You'll be staying somewhere else tonight. She stood there, looking at me like I'd grown fangs. Like I was the monster. But I wasn't. I was just the man who finally stopped being her fool. Clarissa didn't leave that night. She sat on the edge of the bed for 2 hours, suitcase half packed like she was hoping I'd change my mind or forget what betrayal feels like. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable, like I was the one tearing the house apart brick by brick. I didn't speak. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sun to come up and take her with it. By morning, she was gone. Not a word, not a goodbye. Just silence and the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the closet. I'd always liked that scent. Now it smelled like deceit with top notes of office scandal. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and watched the world go on like it hadn't just imploded in my living room. Birds chirped. Kids waited for the school bus. Somewhere, probably Anthony S., was trying to convince HR that this was all a big misunderstanding. I gave it a few hours before I checked the email. My inbox was a war zone. There were messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. High school friends. Former coworkers. Even Clarissa's yoga instructor, who, in a particularly unhelpful message, said she'd always felt the energy between them was off. Thanks, Susan. Real helpful now. But buried between all the noise was a message from her boss, a woman named Dana Callahan. Mr. Denton, I'm not contacting you in any official capacity. I just wanted to say, good for you. That took guts. We were all blindsided. The company is handling this matter internally, but know this. You exposed something a lot of people were too afraid to say out loud. I hope you find peace. Dana. I sat with that for a moment. Not because it made me feel better, but because it made one thing painfully clear. This wasn't just a personal implosion. It was a professional detonation. Clarissa was finished in that industry. PR is all smoke and mirrors, and hers just got shattered with a spotlight. No firm worth its spin would touch her now, not after that email made the rounds. And you'd think I'd feel bad. That maybe, somewhere in my now fireproof soul, I'd dig up an ounce of sympathy for the woman who blew up our marriage like it was a 4th of July barbecue. But no, what I felt was freedom. Until, of course, she showed up again. It was 3 days later. She knocked. Not rang the doorbell. Not barged in. Knocked. Like a stranger. I opened the door, leaned against the frame. Lose your key. She was wearing jeans, a plain sweater, hair pulled back in a ponytail. The PR queen look was gone. She looked tired. Smaller, somehow. Can we talk? She asked. I stepped aside. Didn't say anything. Just let her walk in. Let her feel the weight of the silence she'd created. She sat on the couch. I stayed standing. I talked to a lawyer, she started. She says I shouldn't sign that agreement. Of course she did, I said. Her job is to protect your interests. Mine was to protect our marriage. One of us failed. She winced. It's just fast. This all feels fast. I let out a dry laugh. Oh, now you want to slow things down? Funny, you didn't say that to Anthony when you were rushing to take off your dress. She didn't respond. Just picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. I lost my job. I know. And Anthony's wife kicked him out. I know that too. She sent me a gift basket. Clarissa looked up. Seriously. Fruit and a thank you card, I said. Classy move. Her lip trembled. I watched her battle with whether or not she had the right to cry in this house. Spoiler, she didn't. Why'd you do it that way? She asked. The email. The public humiliation. Why not just confront me like a normal person? I stepped forward. Because you weren't a normal person. You were a PR exec. You crafted lies for a living. You would have spun it, denied it, cried, manipulated. And I would have bought it, because I loved you. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I needed the truth to be undeniable, I continued. For you. For me. For every poor soul you lied to. She nodded slowly. Well, mission accomplished. I took a deep breath. Look, Clarissa, you're not the first person to cheat. And sadly, I'm not the first guy to be cheated on. But what you did wasn't just infidelity, it was arrogance. You used your work email. You joked about me in messages. You brought your affair into our home, into our life, like I was too stupid to notice. Her eyes welled. I wasn't thinking straight. I felt stuck, bored, like we were just roommates. Then you should have talked to me, not bedded your coworker like it was a team-building exercise. We stood there in silence, just the hum of the fridge and the sound of her breathing. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said, but I'm still done. She finally stood up, and for the first time, didn't try to argue. She reached for the folder on the table, the separation agreement. I'll sign it, she said. I hope one day you'll see the woman I used to be. I looked her dead in the eye. I do. That's what makes this harder. She nodded. No more words. She walked out the door and didn't look back. And as I watched her drive away for the last time, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel empty either. I felt like a man who finally got his house back. The email had been a move. The separation? A message. But revenge? Real revenge? That was a long game. And I had one more move left on the board. See, while Clarissa had been busy betraying me in hotel rooms and Outlook threads, I'd been quietly building my insurance policy. Not just proof of the affair. Not just legal paperwork. I'd been collecting whispers. Anthony wasn't her first. I know. Shocking. Turns out, when you give people anonymity and a little room to vent, they say things. I started with one simple Reddit thread under a throwaway account. Just a vague scenario, wife cheats, coworker involved, suspicious timeline, and the floodgates opened. Within a week, I had a message from a guy named Ruben. Ruben worked in Clarissa's department years ago. He moved cities, changed jobs, but he never forgot the golden girl who used to flirt too much, drink too often at conferences, and always had some poor guy following her around like a lapdog. He didn't name names, but I connected the dots. Anthony was just the first one dumb enough to get caught in writing. The others? More careful, but not invisible. So I tracked one of them down, Eric. Happily married now, 2 kids, and very interested in making sure his past didn't surface. I didn't need him to confess. I just needed to know I was right. And when I mentioned Clarissa's name, he went silent for 12 seconds straight. Bingo. We met one final time, me and Clarissa. She wanted closure. I wanted a front row seat when I served the last course. We met at our favorite Italian place. Well, former favorite. The same place she'd once celebrated her promotion. I got there early, requested a booth near the back, and made sure to leave the chair across from me with its back to the rest of the restaurant. She arrived 10 minutes late, heels clicking, makeup thick enough to paint over a guilty conscience. "Thanks for meeting," she said, sliding into the seat. "You're welcome," I said. "I figured you'd want to clear your conscience." She smiled awkwardly. "I just thought we could talk. Maybe not as a married couple, but as two people who once loved each other." "That's generous of you," I said, sipping water. She cleared her throat. "I've been staying with my sister. Got a job interview next week. Nothing glamorous, but it's something." I nodded. "Good for you." There was a pause. She kept glancing behind me, distracted by something. I leaned forward, voice low. "Do you recognize the woman behind me?" "Far table. Blonde. Green blazer." Clarissa's eyes darted, then went wide. "Is that Anthony's wife?" I said. "Rachel. Lovely woman. Turns out, she and I have a lot in common. You know, shared trauma, a mutual appreciation for honesty, and a taste for Pinot Noir." Clarissa blinked. You're dating her?" I smiled. "That's not the right question. Try again." Her face dropped as the blood drained from it. "You're working with her." "Ding ding," I said. "And what do you think she did with that private investigator's report? The one with the videos, the emails, the timestamps?" "You wouldn't." "She would." "And she did." Clarissa's fork clinked as it hit the table. She stood up. "This is insane." "Sit down," I said evenly. "Or make a scene. Up to you." She sat. "You blew up a marriage for a fling, Clarissa. But you also made one." I gestured behind me. "She and I? We built a bonfire out of your lies." 2 days later, the final blow landed. A digital envelope, sent to her entire professional network. Not the email this time. No, this one was more elegant. A portfolio. Inside, screenshots of inappropriate communications. Expense reports misused for personal rendezvous. And an anonymous tip submitted to her industry's ethics committee. She would never work in PR again. Not with a blacklist that detailed her behavior like it was part of her resume. She called me 8 times. I answered the 9th. "Why are you doing this?" she begged. "Because I want to make sure the next man you lie to has the full story." Click. The divorce finalized in a quiet courtroom on a Tuesday morning. She signed without fanfare. I kept the house, the car, and, thanks to a certain clause I added late in the process, exclusive rights to a small marketing venture we'd started together years ago. The one she named. The one I now owned. I renamed it the Phoenix Clause. Because sometimes you have to burn it all down to see what can rise from the ashes. Clarissa didn't cry in court. She didn't speak. Just walked out with her head down, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he was regretting his career choices. Outside, I bumped into Rachel. She offered a coffee and a smile. "You sure you're okay?" she asked. "I'm not okay," I said. "But I'm free." I moved on. Sold the house. Started a consulting firm. Got a dog who doesn't cheat, lie, or forget my birthday. I don't check up on her. I don't need to. Last I heard, she moved 2 states over. New name, new job, new story. But history has a way of echoing. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. When someone shows you who they are, don't just believe them. Write it down. Print it. BCC the company. And walk away with your dignity intact and your spine straighter than ever. Because I may have lost a wife, but I found something better. Peace.